Patterson Tower, Medflight 8, 100 feet, about 7 miles southwest of the field, like transition here, Delta northeast bound.
Medflight 8 Patterson Tower, use extreme caution for heavy UAS movement on the base. Security forces is handling the situation. Suggest at or above 1700 AGL.
That we will maintain 2000 and on our transition for Medflight 8.
And I gotta keep the lights down so that security forces can see.
Roger that, no problem. I'm sorry about that. You got stepped on by other traffic. Can you say again?
Yes, sir. Your transition is still approved. However, Patterson Class Delta is sterilized as of 0330 Zulu for heavy unknown UAS activity. Security forces is handling it, and Columbus is going to sterilize the airspace after you leave the Delta.
Roger that, no problem. Thank you.
All aircraft use extreme caution. Patterson Class Delta is now closed for heavy UAS activity.
The mystery drones over a major U.S. military base in Louisiana. Waves of high-tech drones flying over the highly sensitive area. That base housing B-52 bombers and the Air Force's nuclear command.
Tonight, law enforcement officials are warning of a significant threat to public safety and national security after swarms of high-tech drones invaded the airspace over one of the nation's most strategic military installations for nearly a week. A confidential briefing document reviewed by ABC News said earlier this month, multiple waves of 12 to 15 drones flew for hours at a time over sensitive areas of Barksdale Air Force Base near Shreveport, Louisiana, home of B-52 bombers and the Air Force's nuclear command.
And the Air Force was not able to do anything to stop them.
The drones operated in loose formations, then dispersed across sensitive locations on the base, and they're unlike anything available off the shelf. The document said these drones have a much longer range and are resistant to jamming.
The sophistication we see in both how the drones were employed and the kinds of drones don't point to some hobbyist. They point to a state actor.
Barksdale Air Force Base, ABC News, it is investigating multiple unauthorized drones operating in our airspace during the week of March 9th, not long after the start of the war with Iran.
The analysis we reviewed, David, said these still unexplained incursions are expected to continue, and law enforcement officials, David, have long expressed concerns about the country's ability to defend itself from drones.
Hey, America. Welcome to Steel News. I'm Ann Vandersteel, and we've got a really incredible show for you this evening. There's a lot of news going on out there, but some of the stuff we haven't been focusing on is what's happening here at home. And for weeks now, Americans have been looking up. We're not just looking at chemtrails anymore, because when we look up in the sky, we're seeing other things. And frankly, what we're seeing isn't really making sense anymore. Thousands of drone sightings over neighborhoods. I've seen them over my house, over military bases. I've even seen them over the highways we're driving. And what's even more scary is, frankly, we're seeing a lot of these drones over our critical infrastructure. Now, the FBI has admitted that they've received thousands of tips. I may have been one of them. The federal government tells you, don't worry about it, that there's nothing to see there. That perhaps maybe it's just hobbyists, maybe it's just an aircraft, maybe it's just the stars. But you know what? There's a problem with all that, because these drones are flying at night in patterns, and they're flying with purpose. And even the experts are asking a different question. What are they looking for? Because according to one of the top voices in the field, our guest today, John Ferguson, the only reason you fly drones like this at night is simple. You're actually searching for something. Now the narrative has shifted. And at one point, there were claims that were tied to perhaps even looking for missing radioactive material. Officials quickly walked that back, said it was nothing, said it was found, said drones were not involved. But that doesn't answer the bigger question. If these drones aren't searching for something, why are they there at all? And more importantly, who is controlling them? Because if there's anything we've learned about our government, and you know me, I love to rail on the government because when the government lips are moving and they say there's nothing to see there, that's usually when you know they're lying and you better be looking closer. Joining me now is John Ferguson. He's a Marine veteran, a drone expert, and the founder of Saxon Aerospace, a company specializing in unmanned aerial systems and advanced drone technologies. John has been at the center of the national conversation after offering a very viral analysis of the drone sightings, suggesting that these operations may be intentional, targeted, and far more sophisticated than what we're being told. John, welcome to Steel News. It is great to have you here with me today. We have got a lot to talk about.
Well, thank you, Ann. It's great to be here, and it's great to see you again. It's been a couple of years.
It has been a few years, hasn't it? So
Yeah.
let's dive into what are we actually seeing? What do you make of the sheer volume of these thousands of reports?
Well, there is so much to unpack on, your opening statement. That was fantastic. But, if you think about these aircraft, like the one that, the picture of the one that I have behind me here, this is one of the aircraft that we manufacture, and it's, $150,000, $200,000 system. And that's the size of these aircraft that's being reported flying over our critical infrastructure. And that is absolutely alarming to me.
Mhm.
In no reality would I have ever have thought that any administration would allow a adversarial nation to fly something like this in that magnitude over our critical infrastructure. 'Cause we'll get into the data and what they actually could be collecting, here soon. But again, to have these things flying over critical infrastructure is it blows me away that somebody would actually allow that. That's like saying that we're allowing you to invade our country,
Exactly. And I've seen a drone, a very large one. I think it was over the turnpike when we were driving back from Colorado in the last couple of months. And we were shocked. We had just gotten into Florida and we were going down the turnpike. We looked up and I said, is that like a traffic drone? Are they trying to issue speeding tickets? But it was big. I mean, and it was early in the morning too. So it was really, I would say like wee hours of the morning. So it was, this again fits the pattern of flying at night. So why do you think officials are sort of saying that these are, they're misidentifying the purpose? Or we've heard so many stories, including, the Newsweek article that went out. Mystery drones could be trying to find radioactive material. Why have they had so many misdirects in the narrative?
That I'm glad you asked that question, because if you remember last year, 24-25 timeframe, I had come out with that report that we were very confident that they were looking for nuclear warheads, and we were right. Back in the 80s and 90s, there were 132 nuclear warheads that came up missing and were entered into the black market by General LeBedge after Reagan and Gorbachev tore down the nuclear missile program. Well, they didn't have any oversight after the fact. So there were 132 of them that were entered into the black market, and there's actually a report out there that you can find. Then also in the 90s, there was a report stating that they believed that there was one that was brought into the United States. And the gentleman that I was still am working with, he was accidentally exposed to this warhead, and he tracked everything to where it's here in America. And there not only is there one, but there's two. More than likely there's two. So when I saw these elected officials, people that we put in office to run our states and our country, and they're saying they're Iranian coming out of the motherships and out of the water and all this other crap, I just thought, oh my God, this country is in trouble. If these are the people that are leading our country, we're in trouble. So yeah. I did that video where I said, look, folks, don't shoot them down. They're looking for this. And why do I know this? Because I work with the guy who actually tracked that asset being brought into the country. And just recently we turned over evidence to that fact where they have not found that asset still to this day. And we have uncovered evidence that's showing that they're planning on using that here in this country this year. So we turned all of that information over, and now it's in the hands of the authorities, and it's up to them to do what they're going to do with it. We can't control it any further. But that was, and as a matter of fact, that I had received several calls from White House officials who unofficially couldn't say anything, but they said, yeah, we hit the nail on the head. And it was validated that we were 100% accurate. We were correct 100% of the way.
Okay, I want to pause because we were going to go down the drone path, but you just dropped something that's extremely alarming. So I want to pause and pull this little conversation over to the side of the road and just go back to what you said. Restate what you just said regarding nuclear material that has been smuggled in this country and that you have uncovered a plan and reported this to the authorities. Walk us through this again, because you're basically saying there is something out there that potentially will be launched against Americans. Do we have any detailed information as to when, where, what's the target?
I do know what the target is, and we can discuss that offline if you don't mind. So my apologies for your show.
Okay, no, don't. It's not an apology, but okay.
Well, I can't disclose certain information, just especially after we turned all the information over. But I am absolutely 1,000% telling you that they're absolutely 1,000%. There is one, more than likely two assets here in the United States, and we believe that they are not in control of the good guys. We believe they are very much in control of the bad guys, because the bad guys brought them in. And,
okay, and the bad guys would be who? Which country?
Well, we know that the Iranians had their fingerprints on it. We don't believe that the Iranians control it still to this day. But if you do not service these systems every 7 or 8 years or so, they kind of go inert. So you have to service them. If they go inert, then they're kind of classified as like, a dirty bomb.
Right.
But if you do service them, then you get close to the full yield. And we know that the Iranians are the ones who had serviced this particular asset. So, but we had turned over the information on how it was brought in and everything, and the globalists that brought it in. So, and that's not a joke. I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theory guy. We're only dealing in facts, right?
No, I understand.
But yeah,
well, the reason I'm asking for more questions, I'm
Yeah.
asking questions because Doc Pete Chambers had reached out to me about a year and a half or more ago regarding some Iranians that smuggled in missiles, and I think there was
very familiar.
Okay, so is this along in the same context? Is the same group of people involved in all of these, nefarious activities of bringing weapons into our country of mass destruction? Really?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you knew this about me, but I think the last time you and I spoke, I had spent several years working south of the border as one of the only Americans combating narco terrorism, human trafficking, child sex trafficking, and then I had spent several years on the border as well. And then we have a mutual friend who has worked on the border, right? So, I've spent a good portion of the past decade working in this arena, and we had uncovered that there were shipping containers full of just really nasty stuff that had been brought over. And of course, yourself with all the wonderful work that you've done, is we all have uncovered at certain aspects different types of nefarious adversarial type nations that have been, funneling people into this country with ill intent. And we also uncovered that the Iranians, really the nefarious type Iranians, I worked with wonderful Iranians around the world, but the bad actors are really, there's a lot of them that are in the trucking industry, and they've been distributing these shipping containers full of bad stuff around the United States. I believe you're very familiar with that. So
absolutely.
And I had lunch on multiple occasions with some very high up, as you could say, mutual friends that we have, and they all know about it, but there wasn't anything they could do about it at the time. So
interesting.
It's out there.
I want to get back to the drones, but one follow-up question now, because we are at war with Israel against Iran. There's a lot of misinformation that people intentionally don't mean to spread. There's a lot of disinformation that bad actors want to spread. But we've known about the threat inside the wire here in this country now going back years, and particularly with the work I've done on the border with people that you and I both know, Michael Yon for one, and others. The fact is, we know we have a massive threat of people. We have PLA army members in here, in addition to Iranians and Pakistani and on and on and on. You name the threat actor, they're here. But I don't see that the financial deployment and the resources on our side are being deployed to the level of what I would call weaponized mass deportations to get rid of these bad actors that we know have this cargo sitting inside our country right now. This is very alarming, and we're sending assets overseas right now. And I'm not sure how that is going to impact what's happening here, because I think anything that shuts down Iran over there, especially if there's a regime change, I believe that Polymarket posted this morning that Pete Hegseth is alluding to the fact we've now engaged in a regime change, and supposedly some good guys are in there, maybe. I don't know. But could that be a signal to set off whatever's here? This is where I'm concerned. I don't know that we have enough assets here defending our nation.
Well, that's a wonderful statement. And I have, I've done a lot of discussions, especially over the past, few weeks, where one of the things that I have said is that, drones don't have to be highly technologically advanced assets. They can just be dumb drones, right?
Right.
It doesn't matter if they're made out of, paper skin or, made out of balsa wood or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's all it has to do is just fly. And there's a $500 autopilot in the drones that make them fly and do their job. It's a $500 autopilot, and it's absolutely insignificant. And they say the Shahed drone is $30, $40, $50,000. I can build that thing in less than 20.
Wow.
And so you program that on a mission, and it will just go out and do the mission. And with President Trump and all of the tariffs and the Doge activity and bringing all of this money back and investment back into the country, I've done a lot of these podcasts and TV shows where I've said, hey, look, if I were the president, I would take some of that money that you've been saving and building back into America, and I'd shave off $2 or $3 billion, and I would give that money to build up our counter drone technology. I would give every single drone manufacturer in America that builds American-made aircraft, I'd give every single one of them a contract. Companies would flourish. There would be employment opportunities out the wazoo, and we would build up the most defensive posture we possibly could here in America, because America hasn't been attacked in many, many, many decades as a full-scale invasion, right?
That's right. We haven't seen it.
Most every other country in the world has had some form of an invasion at one point or other. We are behind the 8 ball. We are due. And I believe that this is the time where we have to keep our head on a swivel, because it's coming. Well, it's actually here. Really quick, there's a lot of talk about these sleeper cells here in America.
Right.
And I've been using the term, there are sleeper cells, which are ill-trained individuals who are just going to go out and do a job. They're just going to go do whatever it is they're told to do. But then you have a splinter cell that what I would consider, my own terminology, to be a very highly technologically, very highly advanced trained person to do a very specific mission. I believe there are both here in this country.
Okay. Well, that is the catastrophe that we've been basically, I don't want to say prophesizing, because that's not the right word, but we've been predicting this now for some time, with the amount of, thanks to Biden and the open borders and the United Nations and all the funding that the United States, we're the largest funder of the UN, and that money funnels right into these NGOs that import these people, starting with IOM and, Jewish Family Services and HIAS and you name it, they're all out there. UNHCR, et cetera. We have imported the worst of the worst into this country right now, and we don't have the best of the best en masse deporting them and rounding them up. We're making headway, and Tom Homan is doing the best he can with what little he has.
Tom's wonderful.
Talk about a hero, Tom Homan, folks. He is a sincere hero, and Trump is very lucky to have him. He just needs more. He needs more Tom Homans. And I know J.J. Carroll went back into leaving from Border Patrol. He did broadcasting, and now he's back working at ICE, and he's working on some dangerous stuff. We are literally behind the 8 ball. Like you said, we're behind the curve on all this. And I've spoken with Joseph Humeyer a number of times, who is the Latin America expert. You probably know him. He was the one who told me years ago when we were in Panama that the Iranians have outfitted Venezuela with an incredible drone resource. So who knows for all this? Maybe these are the drones that are coming in on these cargo containers that are now stationed all over the country, and they're parking them by Barksdale and everywhere else. And they're just sort of testing our security system to see how we're going to respond. So how many penetration tests are they going to do before they finally act? I mean, where do you think we are on that hierarchy, or that scale of they've tested, and now it's time to deploy the real mission?
Well, no, I'll answer that very directly. And by the way, you hear it here first on the Ann Vandersteel show that I think Tom Homan should be running for president in 2028, because he's the only one that I know of, and I don't know everybody, of course, but he's the only one that I know of that has the moxie to fill Trump's shoes, Yeah. So if he's listening, you know, Tom.
I'll clip this
Tom
and send
Holman
it to him.
28.
How's that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Love Tom. He's fantastic.
But so, you know, for decades on the battlefield, you know, men and women have died collecting data that a $2,000 drone at Best Buy will provide instantly. So these drones will fly over critical infrastructure, and there's a geotag behind every single image. And we have software that can, you know, stitch all of that imagery together and build yourself a map. And that map will give you a digital elevation model, which you can Google, digital elevation model. It will give you a 3D model of any structure. So if you are going to attack a specific structure, you would want to know how tall it is, how wide it is, right? Because that will give you an idea of what kind of a, you know, weapon you'll need to destroy that structure. But also the mapping being less than an inch in accuracy can also give you the volumes of depressions, right? So yeah, there you go. And so again, this is all data that men and women for years have died to collect for us before we go do a mission. And now a $2,000 damn drone at Best Buy will go out and give you that information in less than a couple of hours, right? So that's very important. I believe that the drones that are flying over our critical infrastructure, I'm going to kind of go against the grain here a little bit, but I'm going to believe that they're probably ours for whatever reason. I don't know. But can you imagine that any base commander or, you know, Pete Hegseth or anyone in the administration would allow a $150,000, $200,000, $500,000 drone in dozens of these things being allowed to fly over our critical infrastructure? I mean, never would we ever, as an American, as America, would we ever allow that to happen? So a lot of times these base incursions are just people who are ill informed and ill prepared and not actually flying drones legally. We also have remote ID. So every drone sold in America has a little module on it, and that module will tell you who owns that drone, where it's at, and it'll give law enforcement every bit of information that they need to track that drone and find out who the owner is, right? So they can't be flying. An adversarial nation just can't be flying that aircraft over the United States. And if that is actually happening, then this is the most failed administration in the history of the world. And I don't think that Trump is going to ever allow that, especially Pete Hegseth. I don't think they're ever going to allow that.
I certainly would hope so. I mean, everything that, you know, President Trump has run on and what you've heard Pete Hegseth over the years when he was sitting on the couch at Fox News, you know, before he became the Secretary of Defense, has always been very pro-America and making America first. This is why the Iran war has always been troubling to me, because of what I know is inside our wire here. And I'm like, we need the resources here. You know, this is sort of that argument of, do we or do we not put the military on the ground? I understand commie positatis, but at the same token, we have a threat here. And I'm almost wondering why the governors never stood on Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3. They never repelled a foreign invasion during the Biden regime of terror.
Hell no, they gave him an invitation.
An invitation and a bus ticket to go somewhere else. I mean, this was
and a credit card.
Including, I'm sorry, I'm going to call her out, Kristi Noem. So there was no pushback from Christie's department. She didn't, deport anybody. She could have put people on a plane. I challenged my own reps in Florida. Why aren't you spending the money instead of bus tickets from Florida to Massachusetts and Cape Cod? Put them on a plane back to where they came from. Oh, you can't do that. That's illegal. No, it's not. I condone it. No. And it's in our Constitution to repel that foreign invasion, which is what we have going on. Anyhow, I want to address this comment here from Robert in LinkedIn, Robert Jarava. He says, retired Colonel McGregor suggested Iran may attack USA from the Pacific. Hard to ignore a Colonel Douglas McGregor prediction. And what do you think? I saw that come through, and I just thought I would pull that out.
Well, that's a great question. A little background on the drones and how they operate. So here in the United States, we have like 5.8 gigahertz, 900 megahertz, 2.4 gigahertz. That's kind of the frequencies that our drones here operate typically. And then there's other frequency bands that we can fly on, but typically go more into the military aircraft. So we can, by a frequency, we can disrupt those drones by sending out a counter frequency to take it over the aircraft. but they do frequency hopping so that if they get hit, they can hop over to a different frequency, like 2.4 to 2.2 or to 2.280 or whatever, right? We have lasers, and then we also have microwave pulses that can take these aircraft down. The problem is that the bureaucracy here in the United States is if we shoot something at a drone, then what's behind it? Is there a family of 4 in the Cessna behind that? And are we going to take that out? And that's why it's so difficult to try to down these drones over our critical infrastructure. But getting to the situation on the Pacific where we have shipping containers coming in, and the threat that Iran or any other adversarial nation is going to unleash thousands of drones out of shipping containers, logistically, it's not impossible. I would say it's 100% intent and a 0% probability, because we have the Navy, we have the Marines, we have our coastal defenses that would never allow that to happen. They could try, and maybe they'll get a few through the wire, as you say, but it will never be a large attack because we have so much technology on the coast. We have the Navy, those big gray things on the, floating on the water there. They'll never let something like that happen. They would have to shoot those. They would have to launch those out of the 12-mile, free zone or international
waters, right? Yeah.
And so these drones will only fly anywhere from 80 to 100 miles an hour with a gas-propelled engine. If they use rockets, you have very limited time because they burn through rocket fuel very quickly. Sure. So they would have to fly with a gas engine or like a fuel injected type engine. And they can only fly a maximum 100, 120 miles an hour or so. And so when you're launching at such a long distance, you have so much time to react that it's just almost impossible for them to deploy all of these drones out of these shipping containers, and the Navy would blow them out of the water in the first 5-10 minutes anyway. So sure. It's a great question.
Well, when you compare what's going on in Iran, Israel and Iran war, the information coming out is that the drones are actually doing damage to the infrastructure in the Gulf and the Gulf Cooperation Council or country. Whether it's Saudi Arabia or it's Qatar or any of the countries that are producing oil and natural gas, they have taken hits from these drones.
Yes.
That are $20,000, $30,000 drones. Like you said, they don't cost a whole heck of a lot. And you're shooting multi-million-dollar defense missiles back at them and missing.
Yeah.
So
that's the plan. Drones aren't picked up very well on radar. We have counter drone technology that is designed to pick up the drones. But again, it's not 100%. So it's never going to be 100%.
So I want to move on here because I don't want to keep you on past an hour, and I have a 1 o'clock. I've got to get to you also. But I know I appreciate this. I have lots of questions. So let's go back to these drones flying at night. They're looking for something. What kind of mission requires nighttime drone deployment, and what technologies would be used in such a search? So really, what are they looking for? I know you mentioned there's nuclear material, but is there anything else?
Sure. You would, if you're looking for something very specific, if you have sensors that are like methane detection systems that we put on our aircraft, we've actually gone over to Europe and flown over mass graves, from World War II. And, the bodies will, off-gas methane. Well, they're still off-gassing methane. So we can actually pick up those mass graves just by measuring the parts per million. So,
wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's crazy, the sensitivity of these sensors. So you would want to fly at night for a couple of reasons. Number one, you fly under the cloak of darkness and you're not as easily spotted. Right. Those drones in 24, 25, they were all flying mostly under the FAA mandates. Right. So that's kind of when we knew that they weren't adversarial. So the other thing is that you would fly at night because, the barometric pressure is down, the winds are down. You're going to get a better sample from the ground for these different types of sensors. And then also we have thermal imaging. And if you Google thermal imaging, what that is that you take the heat and the cold differential and create a digital image out of that. So I can take my hand, put on a Coke can, and then I can put my hand on a desk, and I can take my hand off of the desk, and then you can see my handprint, because what it's doing is it's measuring the temperature differential. Not only that, but we have radiometrics where we can actually get a temperature reading off of that. So you see on the reds and the greens and the yellows, the reds are hotter.
Right.
With radiometric thermal imaging, you can actually get the temperature. I've sold drones to farmers and ranchers who want to take temperatures of their cattle. And if a cow is running a little hot, then maybe it's sick, right? But also, if you're doing preventative maintenance, you can get radiometric feedback off of transformers on power lines or hydraulic lines or whatever. And if things are running a little hotter, then maybe there may be a mechanical issue that's coming up, and you can take that out of service without causing downtime for that asset.
So is it possible then that some of these recent drone sightings are really just new applications of technology that drones can actually look for, whether it's radiation, whether it's chemical signatures, or maybe they're just doing some surveillance mapping? And could some of these things be a little bit more innocuous than something very scary, like looking for nuclear material?
Well, again, a $2,000 to $3,000, $5,000 drone at Best Buy will go and do everything you want it to do as far as thermal imaging.
Is it being more actively deployed in this fashion for private contractors versus, say, the military looking for something, or nefarious actors? I mean, what is your gut think here in terms of the mass application? Is it really more for private work, just like you said, looking for methane or whatever it is, temperatures on cows?
Well, I know it's kind of crazy, right? But
yeah,
no, I do believe that these are contractors, because again, think about how many of these drones are being flown. They're saying that they're flying in waves, right? So if they're flying in waves and they're this size, which is, a 4.1 meter wingspan, we're talking, several $100,000 in drones. So there's no hobbyist out there that's doing that, so that has to be deployed by, in my eyes, a government entity, right?
So then the question is it our government or foreign actors? Because if the reports of these grid-like flight paths and their coordinated movements and all these repeated night operations, I mean, that indicates something from some sort of an operational standpoint. But what is it and who is it?
I still believe that these are our drones. Okay. Because I just don't want to lose faith. So
why lose transparency then? Why the lack of transparency? Why the constant shifting of what it is and then talking nothing about it at all?
I'm trying to think back. I'm 56 years old, and I'm trying to remember when any administration has ever told us the truth ever, since I've been alive.
Good point.
Struggling
Very good point.
with that. Why they do the things that they do, I have no freaking clue. I'm not on the inside, unfortunately, but again, I mean, just think about that though. These massive drones, hundreds of thousands of dollars being flown by an adversarial nation, it just doesn't make sense to me. And if that is the case, then I think there needs to be several heads on a platter, from the top all the way down. But maybe it's the government, testing our weaknesses, because they've found our weaknesses. Yeah. They've found the holes in the wire. They absolutely have. And maybe that's just what they're doing, and it's just none of our business. I don't know.
Well, hopefully it's our government doing a penetration testing to see what the response is going to be. Because if we're witnessing sort of normalization of aerial surveillance, it's just another notch in the bedpost for the Palantir digital prison from where I'm sitting. So I don't want it to be conditioning for the public. I mean, that's kind of what it's starting to feel like to me, right?
Oh, I'm with you. I'm tracking 100%. Well, let me ask you, what do you think, Ann? Do you think these are adversarial nations that are controlling these aircraft?
Well, if they were adversarial, like I agree with you, I would hope that our military would have already taken the appropriate evasive maneuvers to shoot them out of the sky or do whatever they need to, send up the F-35s or the F-18s, whatever it is, but go up there and take a look at them. And since we don't see any reporting of that, and I do watch Monkey Works from time to time, and I haven't seen him.
I love that guy.
Yeah, I know. I haven't seen him, and I might have missed it because I can't watch everything, but I haven't seen him address that. So I don't see that being addressed anywhere. But perhaps Saxon Aerospace could be building something right now to address this. Is there any advanced drone technology that you guys are working on to deal with this?
Well, that's the most wonderful part about this industry, is that, your only limiting factor is your imagination, right?
Right.
And there are so many wonderful companies out there that are just sitting around. They got these engineers just sitting around thinking up the cool stuff to do. And this industry is compounding exponentially. The Chinese, they have subsidized their Chinese drones. And of course, they've been spying on the whole world for almost 20 years using these aircraft. So they are ahead of us when it comes to the commercial type drones.
Wow.
The military drones aren't that great, but they're getting better. So we don't subsidize our drone industry like they do. So our advancements in our technology, I believe, are a little slower than the Chinese. But again, a drone is nothing more than a taxi cab for a cool sensor. Just how smooth of a ride are you going to give the sensor? Because that's all a drone is. It's just an aircraft. So, there's new thrust technology that's coming out. Where we're really struggling in this industry is the battery tech. There are some laws of physics that you just can't overcome, and that's you can't charge faster than you discharge. And these batteries will discharge as they're powering the system. That's advancements that we need to make. We have hydrogen technology, but they're so big and cumbersome that you take the payload away from the aircraft, right? So there's hybrid that seems to be working quite well, but there's a lot of advancements in sensor technology, but there's nothing that I see, and I could be wrong, there's nothing that I see that's going to be groundbreaking, with the exception of the AI part being incorporated into the aircraft, which is even far more scarier.
100% agree. I mean, when you tie AI and you sort of make that the encompassing blanket over all of this stuff and how it's tying everything together from our agencies. Frankly, a lot of our agencies are now being managed by AI. Look at the stock market, for instance. It's basically all algo trading. So we're sort of giving up our sovereignty, our personal decision-making capacity. And we've been doing that by giving it to unelected bureaucrats in these agencies now for decades. And now they're farming it out to, Palantir. And it gives everybody another layer of, plausible deniability. Oops, that wasn't my call. AI screwed up. And now we're looking at this. This is, I think Americans need a major wake-up call. And perhaps all of the media around this and the sort of speculation as to what it is, good guys, bad guys, who knows what they're looking for, radiation, whatever. You made that right at the beginning of the story of the show today, that, there is radioactive material on the loose in this country. I've reported on other assets in this country. Lots of people have reported on the cargoes and the fact they can launch missiles out of these things. We have a real threat here in this country. And yet I just don't see the administration of any kind turning that threat, should we say counterintelligence, right back into addressing the threat level in this country. And that's, very worrisome.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Ann, and you can shoot me for saying this, but
I never shoot you, John.
I think our most greatest adversarial nation is inside our own fence.
I agree.
China, Russia, okay, North Korea, Iran, they're adversaries, but they don't want us to blow them up just as much as they don't want to blow us up, right? But as you and I have both seen with a lot of the work that we've done in the past, that all of the fingers point towards these bad actors here in the United States, and we've actually linked that UK, France, and Germany have had their fingerprints all over a lot of nefarious activities. I'm just saying there's bad actors in France, UK, and Germany that have their fingerprints on some of the stuff that we've talked about in the past. So these bad actors are well within our walls of this nation, and President Trump's going to have to continue trying to weed those people out, and he's going to have to get some of these people to accept the full responsibility of their actions. And that's why I think in 28 that the only person that I know of is Tom Holman. That he's the only guy that I know of that could stand to fight just as much as President Trump.
Yeah. Well, Tom's a great guy, and hopefully he's going to listen to you and consider that as an initiative for. He's got, a couple of years to start planning and fundraising. I think it takes multiple billions now to get that done. I'd like to see all that end. I'd like to see the foreign lobbying money, all the lobbying, the foreign money, all of it, end it all, because, we got to get back to basics. We're mano a mano talking about real issues. I'm going to give you the last word. leave my audience with something so that they either run in total panic and build a bomb shelter, or they will feel a little bit better about the situation. Your call.
You know, I never wanted to be the bearer of bad news. You know, all of the work and stuff that I've done over the past past 10 plus years has all been on my own dime. I've never taken a dime ever once to go down to the border or south of the border to, you know, to help this country be, you know, more safe. And I am very confident that there are people within the law enforcement community that will take our information that we have given them and actually run with it. I believe we're going to be okay, but there's one thing that we have to do as Americans, and that's first and foremost. And we've all seen how the outside entities, the people that call themselves elite, which I don't believe in that word. I think we're all God's, you know, creation, and we're all created equal. I believe that we have to stand together, and it doesn't matter if it's black, white, Latino, Asian, you know, gay, straight, legal, illegal, or Muslim, Christian, Jew, whatever. It doesn't matter. But we as Americans, we have to come together, and we have to realize that we're being played, we're being duped, and we've suckered ourselves into it, and we're falling right into their trap. So again, I've been to 87 countries around the world, and I've worked with African nations to try to build infrastructure between Africa and the United States on a business level. And they all want to do it. They all want to be a part of a bigger deal. And we've got to get this corruption out of here, and allowing these globalist type personnel to continue to run amok in our country and sow all of this divide. It has to stop, but it's not going to stop until we can just all throw our, you know, our hands down and extend our hands towards each other and just start to get along and work together. That's the only way we're ever going to win this. So if we're not willing to do that, you might as well just hang it up.
I couldn't agree more. John, it is a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for, you know, taking the time today and like putting your money into this entire game that we're watching be played, whether we want to be a piece on the chessboard or not. It's happening around us, and you are doing what is, you know, best to do, your civic duty, and you're building the equipment that frankly, perhaps eventually will be a counter to at least know what we've got up in the sky, but also if it's bad actors, maybe perhaps take it out without hurting, like you said, somebody in a 4-seat Cessna behind there. My son's a private pilot, and he flies those all the time. So I don't want him taken out because we're looking at taking drones down.
Well, just remember that, you know, saving this country is not a business.
It's not.
It has to be a passion.
It's civic duty. It's written right into our Constitution. It's in our Declaration. We have a duty. We're duty bound. We were given this beautiful second covenant nation by men who incorporated what the Bible talks about, that all men are created equal and are meant to be free. And we're the only country that actually codified it into our Constitution. And we have a duty to uphold that. I mean, we have a duty to do what God would expect us to do. He put us here for a reason. Go forth and multiply, be good to others. And, you know, we've really lost our way with all that. So I really appreciate everything you're saying today. Thank you. Thank you for bringing us that important news too about the nuclear material still on the loose, but sounds like DC has some good information and you're talking to the right people. So I feel better about that.
Let's see what they do with it. But, you know, everyone needs to just keep their head on as well. Well, don't freak out. You know, everything's going to be fine. We're a nation of strong people. We are a nation, and we're very resilient. We always come back. So thank you so much today for your time, John. I appreciate you, and we'll catch up with you. I'll perhaps catch you up after I get off air. Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow. Okay. Well, wow. That's a lot of information to come right at the beginning of the show. Sort of wasn't what I expected to hear, but it's important that we do hear these things. And what we're really watching unfold, it isn't normal, guys. Whether these drones are government operated, whether they're privately contracted, or there's something totally else, we the people, we deserve transparency from our government. And like John said, I can't remember the last time the government was ever totally honest with us. And I don't buy into this whole misinfo, disinfo is mandatory, is necessary, because when unidentified systems are flying over your neighborhood, your infrastructure, your skies, we shouldn't just be curious about it. We should recognize that this is a sovereignty issue. I mean, hello, that's right over your head. And John Ferguson has given us a framework to start asking the right questions. Now it's up to all of us to demand the answers. I'm so appreciative of John joining us today. If you have any further questions, go to his website and reach out, talk to him. I had his website. It's streaming on the bottom here. He is a fantastic guy, and I highly encourage anybody to reach out and pay attention to what he's saying. He's doing podcasts all over the place. So with that news, I hope everybody has a great afternoon. And like I said, we'll catch you next time here. I'm working on a story about the the famine that is being manufactured, not because of what's happening over in the Straits of Hormuz, being manufactured right here by corporate greed. And I went to Nebraska last week to work on that. I'm putting a lot of information together. It'll probably be in a couple of different episodes that I upload, but maybe I'll stream them, I'll see. But they really won't be live because it's just too much information of pre-recorded interviews and so forth. And I'm working on editing all that down right now. So you guys have a great day. Thanks always for tuning in. God bless you and God bless America.